You are watching The World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I am Parmeshwar Bawa. An action-packed bulletin lined up for you. Let's dive right into the top headlines you need to know. The United States and the European Union reached a tariff deal after a brief meeting between President Donald Trump and European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen. Thai and Cambodian leaders will meet in Malaysia today for talks to end hostilities, a spokesperson for the Thai Prime Minister's office has said. Israel has announced it will pause fighting in some parts of Gaza each day to allow Palestinians to access aid amid growing international condemnation over the territory's humanitarian crisis. The establishment of aid corridors and resumed airdrops come as the New York Times reports that Israel's military found no proof Hamas told United Nations provided aid. Bangladesh's chief advisor, Professor Muhammad Yunus, has renewed his call for Malaysia to support Bangladesh's bid to become a member of the ASEAN, local media is reporting. Wildfires that have engulfed Turkey for weeks have threatened the country's fourth largest city, causing more than 1,700 people to flee their homes and leaving a firefighter dead. The big international headline we're tracking: Donald Trump has announced a deal with the EU to end 4 months of difficult negotiations between Washington and Brussels and also avert a damaging transatlantic trade war, imposing a 15% import tariff on most EU goods, which is actually half the threatened rate. The European Commission chief, Ursula von der Leyen, said, "We have a deal," after a 40-minute meeting with Trump at his golf resort in Scotland, where the US president is on holiday for the weekend. Now, under the agreement, the US will actually levy a 15% baseline tariff. This is for most EU exports to the US, limiting a higher tariff. However, the rate is higher than before Trump came to power, and a 50% tariff remains on steel exports, which is a setback for that industry, as you can imagine. There was actually initial confusion over pharmaceuticals after Trump said the sector would not be included. But Trump went on to call it a giant deal, while von der Leyen hailed it as a win for stability and predictability. As far as reactions from the bloc are concerned, you must note that the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, welcomed the deal. And Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, also said it was positive that a trade deal had been reached, but added that she needed to see the details. Now, key sectors that are likely to be impacted are energy, auto, defense. These sectors are expected to see immediate impacts, in fact. As far as Italy is concerned, you know that it's one of the biggest European exporters to the US. But Trump, by the way, retains the ability to increase the tariffs in future if European countries do not live up to their investment commitments. We have reactions from the US President Donald Trump and the EU Commission chief lined up for you. Listen in.
They are going to agree to invest into the United States $600 billion. All of the countries will be opened up to trade with the United States at zero tariff. We are agreeing that the tariff straight across for automobiles and everything else will be a straight across tariff of 15%. I think it's great that we made a deal today instead of playing games and maybe not making a deal at all. I think it's, I'm going to let you say, but I think it's the biggest deal ever made. Thank you very much.
We have a deal. We have a trade deal between the two largest economies in the world. And it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. It will bring stability. It will bring predictability. That's very important for our businesses on both sides of the Atlantic. It's 15% tariffs across the board, all inclusive. So it's a good deal. It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
It was tough negotiations. I knew it at the beginning, and it was indeed very tough, but we came to good conclusions for both sides.
So while Trump has announced this deal, it imposes a 15% baseline tariff on most EU goods, which is half the previously threatened rate, but still higher than pre-2017 levels. Well, Donald Trump has said he believes that both Thailand and Cambodia wanted to settle their differences after he told the leaders of both countries that he would not conclude trade deals with them unless they ended their fighting. So today, Thai and Cambodian leaders will meet in Malaysia for talks to end hostilities. This is what a spokesperson for the Thai Prime Minister's office has confirmed. But the deadly border dispute has killed at least 35 people and displaced more than 218,000. Let's take a look at what's been happening.
Malaysia is set to host peace talks between Thailand and Cambodia amid their deadliest border clashes in over a decade.
I can confirm that, as it has already been the news issued by the Malaysian side. As ASEAN chair, Malaysia has offered to host the meeting.
What began as a simmering territorial dispute over ancient temples has spiraled into full-scale hostilities. More than 30 lives lost, over 200,000 displaced, and still artillery fire echoes across villages. Thailand's acting Prime Minister, Umtham Bechayachai, will lead his delegation to Malaysia. Cambodia has confirmed Prime Minister Hun Manet will be there too. The talks are scheduled to take place in Malaysia at 3 p.m. local time. This follows weeks of intensified cross-border strikes, including shelling near UNESCO heritage sites like Preah Vihear and Cambodian troops mobilizing long-range rockets. There's global pressure to pause the violence. US President Donald Trump and Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim have both backed a ceasefire plan. The disputed 817-kilometer border, especially the ancient temple zones, remains a geopolitical power keg.
ตกใจคือไอ้ที่เรากำบังกลัวว่ามันไม่ปลอดภัยในรัศมีระเบิดของมันนะว่ามันจะมุดไปตรงไหนมันไม่ทันเลยก็ต้องพยายามทำตัวให้มันต่ำที่สุดแต่มันไม่โดนถ้ามันโดนจังก็ไม่รอดหรอก
With both sides blaming each other and accusing the other of shelling civilians, Monday's talks may be the only diplomatic off-ramp before the violence deepens. The world watches as Thailand and Cambodia arrive at the table. Whether they choose peace or prolong the crisis, this may shape the region for years to come. Rhythm Arcadia's report for NDTV World.
To Bangladesh now, where Chief Advisor Professor Mohammad Yunus has renewed his call for Malaysia to support Bangladesh's bid to become a member of the ASEAN. The Chief Advisor hoped that Malaysia, which is the current chair of ASEAN, will take a proactive role in granting Bangladesh's application to become sectoral dialogue partner of ASEAN and in turn become a full member of the regional body. Switching tracks, at an event in Tamil Nadu held to honour Chola Emperor Rajendra Chola, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had said that Operation Sindoor had demonstrated to the world how India would respond if its sovereignty was attacked, adding that the cross-border military offensive had instilled a new sense of self-confidence across the country. In fact, he added Operation Sindoor proved that there is no safe haven for terrorists or their masters. Listen in to Prime Minister Modi's remarks.
ऑपरेशन सिंदूर ने दिखा दिया है कि भारत के दुश्मनों के लिए, आतंकवादियों के लिए अब कोई ठिकाना सुरक्षित नहीं है। और आज जब मैं हेलीपैड से यहां आ रहा था, 3-4 किलोमीटर का रास्ता काटते हुए, और अचानक मैंने देखा एक बड़ा रोड शो बन गया और हर एक के मुंह से ऑपरेशन सिंदूर का जय जयकार हो रहा था। ये पूरे देश में ऑपरेशन सिंदूर ने एक नई चेतना जगाई है, नया आत्मविश्वास पैदा किया है और दुनिया को भी भारत की शक्ति को स्वीकार करना पड़ रहा है.
In other news, wildfires that have engulfed Turkey for weeks threaten the country's fourth largest city, forcing more than 1,700 people to flee their homes and leaving one firefighter dead. Meanwhile, firefighters elsewhere in the region, including Greece and Montenegro, were also battling blazes fed by unusually high temperatures, dry conditions and strong winds. Dozens of severe wildfires have hit the country daily since late June, with the government actually declaring 2 western provinces disaster areas. Take a look at the finer details.
A rescue mission turned fatal. In northwestern Turkey, 10 frontline heroes, firefighters and rescuers lost their lives as flames closed in faster than they could escape. Minister Ibrahim Yomakli said that the men were battling fierce blaze in Ekşehir province when the wind suddenly shifted and the fire surrounded them. 5 forestry workers, 5 Akut rescue workers, all killed in action. One injured firefighter, barely conscious, could be heard whispering to his colleagues, "I need cold water, pour water all over me." Fourteen others were hospitalized. The death toll from Turkey's wildfires now stand at 13. And the danger isn't over. New fires erupted along Turkey's Mediterranean coast. In Antalya, flames crept dangerously close to homes. Residents fled as fire cut off major coastal road. Further east, Manavgat braced for the worst. The government has declared Izmir and Bilecik disaster zones just one step below a national emergency. According to Interior Minister Ali Yerlikaya, 120 neighborhoods have been evacuated since 27th of June. More than 12,000 emergency workers are now on the ground fighting a firestorm made worse by scorching heat, bone-dry forests and relentless winds. 10 brave men died doing what they do best, saving lives, protecting land. And as Turkey's skies fill with smoke and sirens wail into the night, the battle is now a race against nature itself. With Ridhima Kedia, Rika Roy for NDTV World.
The updates continue in a moment right here on NDTV. Slipping into a very quick break now. Well, there'll be no more extensions on tariff deadlines and they will go into force as scheduled on the 1st of August. This is what US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has said. I'll tell you why this is so significant, because since January, the world has gotten accustomed to US President Donald Trump announcing tariffs and then reversing them, pulling them back at the last moment or pausing them shortly after going into effect. Meanwhile, a man has been arrested for causing disturbance on an EasyJet flight from London's Luton Airport to Glasgow. A video that has gone viral on social media shows the man shouting, "I'm going to bomb the plane." He was also heard saying, "Death to America, death to Trump." A male passenger was then seen tackling him to the ground. Police boarded the aircraft after it landed in Glasgow and arrested the man. Just take a look.
Oh my God.
Sit down. Don't move.
Fucking on the plane! Going to bomb the plane! Dead to America! Dead to Trump!
China has unveiled a global action plan for artificial intelligence just days after Washington released an AI policy roadmap explicitly aimed at securing US dominance over Beijing. Chinese Premier Li Qiang proposed a new international organization to champion cooperation on AI. One analyst said the two camps are now being formed. While Beijing is voicing support for a multilateral approach, the US wants to build its own camp, very much targeting the rise of China. Meanwhile, Israel has announced it would pause fighting in some parts of Gaza each day to allow Palestinians to access aid amid growing international condemnation over the territory's humanitarian crisis. The establishment of aid corridors and resumed airdrops come as the New York Times has reported that Israel's military found no proof that Hamas stole United Nations provided aid. The Israeli government made the decision hastily and in a state of panic. This is what many analysts are arguing. It realized it is no closer to a hostage deal. The US ditched ceasefire talks in Qatar last week, while accounts of starving Palestinians have turned global public opinion further against Israel. By the way, the United Kingdom and Germany, they are weighing toughening their stance on the conflict after France moved to recognize a Palestinian state.
After months of blocking aid into the Gaza Strip, there is finally a sliver of hope. The Israeli military has begun airdropping humanitarian aid and announced that it will now allow the United Nations to move aid trucks into Gaza. The IDF also said it will conduct a local tactical pause of military activity in densely populated areas of Gaza every day from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Despite these moves, the IDF maintains that there is no famine in Gaza, a claim sharply contested by global aid groups. The decision follows mounting international pressure, with multiple aid organizations accusing Israel of weaponizing starvation against Gaza's civilian population.
Well, this is a start, but we need to make sure that people who are innocent, including the young boy who people will have seen that image of, just breaks your heart. A 1-year-old boy is not a Hamas fighter, and the civilian casualties and death in Gaza is completely unacceptable. It's completely indefensible. My government has been very consistent in calling for a ceasefire. We've been consistent on calling out the terrorists in Hamas and saying that the hostages should be released. But we have rules of engagement, and they're there for a reason.
Yet even as aid trickles in, it's coming at a deadly cost. According to the UN Human Rights Commissioner, hundreds have died trying to access food since the US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation began operations in May. The UN has slammed the current aid distribution model as a sadistic death trap, alleging snipers fire indiscriminately on desperate civilians.
جبت الطحين للاولاد قسما بالله لكم اليوم ما عندي طحين خشينا على الموت وعند الدبابات وشفنا الجنود وبطخ علينا وضرب علينا القنابل الضوئيه والرصاص طلع الشباب كل اكياس طحين دم كل اكياس طحين اللي مع الشباب دم سامع احنا بنجيب هذا بس عشان صغارنا احنا بنتحمل بس عشان الصغار مش معانا.
Meanwhile, hopes for a ceasefire have dimmed further after the US withdrew its delegation from talks in Qatar. US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff said Hamas has shown a lack of desire to reach a ceasefire. President Donald Trump echoed this sentiment, backing Israel's continued military operation.
Aid is finally trickling into Gaza as, under international pressure, Israel has made certain concessions. But even for many, a bag of flour also comes soaked in blood. Now the bigger question is that whether all these steps will lead to a permanent relief, or this is just a temporary pause into a humanitarian catastrophe in making for the people of Gaza. In Delhi, Mohammad Ghazali for Ndtv.
Well, in other news, Tata Consultancy Services plans to lay off approximately 2% of its workforce, impacting over 12,000 employees due to macro uncertainties and also artificial intelligence-driven disruptions. This decision follows a decline in job additions across major IT firms and strategic initiatives by TCS to realign its workforce. Puneet Javeri from NDTV Profit has more on this.
TCS has decided to cut 12,000 jobs out of its workforce, and they've mentioned that this is amid a demand slump. They've also gone on to say that this is mainly impacting the middle as well as the senior management at this particular point of time, and said that the added capacity didn't pan out because of a slump in demand that was seen in Q1, as well as leading up to that time frame as well. They've also said that the hiring was done essentially in anticipation of recovery, which did not happen, and the outlook for the second half also seems to be tepid as well. They've also gone to say that the hiring which was done failed to convert into revenues, and hence this necessary step as what they've called it. Now, the company says that AI hasn't triggered any of these layoffs, and that's because this is in middle as well as senior management, but the cost control remains one of the key top focus. But this seemed to be the writing on the wall, because even in Q1, while the hiring number for TCS was just a tad about 5,000 employees, it has been tepid over the last 4 to 8 quarters. For the other IT companies, if we take a look, Infosys actually just added about 210 employees in Q1 of FY26 compared to the last quarter, and we saw a similar number play out for the other IT majors as well. They've also mentioned that TCS is planning to hire roughly 42,000 freshers in FY26. They have a total workforce of about 613,000 as of now, and hence, despite adding freshers at the lower end of the spectrum, they are seeing some kind of cuts, at least in middle management, and hence there seems to be a concern not just led by AI but based on overcapacity as well.
Moving on, India and the United States are preparing to launch the NISAR satellite. It's the world's single most expensive civilian Earth imaging satellite, made at a cost of $1.3 billion. The satellite will be launched from Sriharikota on Wednesday. It's a landmark mission in climate science and disaster preparedness. This is what Dr. Paul Rosen has said. He's a scientist actually working at NASA. He told my colleague Pallav Bagla a lot more. Listen in.
I'm here at the California Institute of Technology, or Caltech, the famous university which also runs the Jet Propulsion Laboratory part of NASA.
So it's very much a climate mission. We're also studying the ecosystems, wetlands, carbon in biomass in forests and agricultural areas, again, to understand the exchange of carbon from the ground up into the atmosphere, and again, related to climate. So very much a climate mission. Another objective is in the area of solid earth and natural hazards. So we're trying to understand the motions of the earth below the crust as they're affected by earthquake faults, volcanoes, and landslides, all the kinds of hazards that affect huge populations around the world. So the science we're trying to accomplish is understanding the earth as a system and making things better for humans, saving lives, as you say.
India wants to use the geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle Mark II. And in India, we call that launch vehicle the naughty boy. Is that a point of worry? When you started off, there was no launch vehicle Mark III. So is a launch on geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle Mark II a point of worry?
Well, any launch is always risky. That's true for any launch vehicle made by any nation. But we had a set of criteria agreed to with between NASA and ISRO as to what would be considered a successful set of steps